It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this. I'm Jeff Grubb. This is Grubbsnax on giantbomb.com. The big, awful news coming out of Activision Blizzard. There's a lot of great reporting out there right now about this. This is the kind of thing where we're kind of lucky right now to have so many people kind of very on top of these things right now when stories like this break. And so I've been reading up. I read the full basically complaint from the state of California Department of Fair Employment and Housing, I think is what it is. I read the full complaint from them, and it's pretty terrible stuff. And it's terrible, and yet it's also unsurprising at a certain level. I've heard complaints from women specifically who've left Activision and Activision Blizzard, saying stuff along these lines, that it was a terrible place to work. I have been told those words. That's what I'll say. I'm not gonna, go in there and say that any specifics. But the thing with this complaint from the Department of Fair Employment and Housing is pretty damning. They are when they're filing a complaint like this, they will include everything, and it'll be their job to prove it once they actually do, get to the point where that's where that, unless Activision tries to settle or something. But I will say, when it comes to an investigation like this that's happening at with public servants working on your behalf to hold a company accountable, that's the kind of thing I wouldn't take that too lightly. I would not brush it off. I would not say that this is not like some private lawyer trying to try to drum something up. Not that would be something that we've actually ever really seen before happen very often in gaming. But this is these are public servants who pick and choose these cases because their time is very valuable, and they have to decide, hey, this is going to be a case that's going to make a difference for a lot of people. It's going to set an example. It's an especially egregious case. I'll say, I've had personal experience with this sort of stuff. I was underpaid by a job in Ohio, and I complained to a state department, and they were like, hey, yeah, we'll handle this for you. And they took the time to make sure I got my money and got paid out and stuff like that, and was paid for the retaliation I got for complaining in the first place. And these are people just doing their jobs to make sure they can enforce the rules. And I think one thing that's it's difficult to remember that we give a lot of power to companies in our society, in the way our economy is set up. We give them a lot of power, especially in the United States. We let them handle the healthcare. They're the ones that pay for healthcare and stuff like that. And we also set it up so that people will basically starve if they're not willing to work. So that encourages people to go get a job. That's how we think about employment here in the United States. And when you give that much power over to something like business, the state holding a business accountable isn't some weird thing. And that was one of the most maybe infuriating things I read since outside of the complaint itself, was Activision's response to it, saying something along the lines of, this is just bureaucrats, and they're the reason all these big companies are leaving California. Pretty awful stuff. That's not. There's no way that's what's happening here. That these are just bored bureaucrats messing with an innocent company. It's vile. I will say that we'll see what happens next. We'll see kind of where this goes. We haven't had too many examples of a state coming down and cracking down with its own rules and saying, hey, you actually have to play by these rules of fair employment and pay people, equivalent pay. Just because they're a different gender, you should still give them the same opportunities. But it goes far beyond that. There were a lot of explicit sexual harassment claims and general harassment claims. And it just, to me, it just seems like such a long laundry list of awful things that, are they going to be able to just get off with a slap on the wrist? I would really, really hope that's not the case here. And I hope I hope it's not just making an example so that other companies will put themselves in line. I'm sort of over that with how we treat companies. We'll go after one company, treat them harshly, and then other companies will step up and pay for their own training to ensure that people are treated more fairly. I think that we could see that's let's just do the enforcement thing. We have these state departments for reasons. Let's let them handle this and actually enforce the rules that are on the books. Also, maybe it's time for Bobby Kotick to go, right? Let's talk a little bit about EA, the Battlefield Portal stuff. And the Battlefield Portal stuff is something that they pre-briefed some people on, and they were talking to some influencers about. But basically, it sounds like they were trying to bring together a bunch of different elements from other Battlefield games into one, and enabling the community to use these components to build their own takes on the Battlefield stuff. So, to me, it almost sounds like the Hitman missions, like where the community is able to make their own Hitman missions. That's the kind of thing that I'm expecting this to kind of feel like. But it's cool that they are using all this other stuff that they've already made for these other games, and I think they're using stuff from Battlefield 3, Battlefield 1942, Battlefield Bad Company 2, and then Battlefield 2042. I think that's the roster of stuff, and it's stuff that should be. It could create a lot of fun, but then they're also going to enable people to go in and adjust the rules and actually use like visual programming to set stuff up. This is all things that we're going to talk about today during EA Play. And then Game Rant went out there and was like, "Hey, we're breaking embargo," and it happens. It does happen. Like no hate towards Game Rant, but that is one of the big things that we're going to talk about. So now that that's out there and we kind of know Dead Space is coming, it's really going to come down to execution. They've already said that they're not going to talk about Dragon Age and stuff, and we'll talk about that in a second about what's going on there. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I'll just say that game, it is a huge hit within the walls of EA. EA executives are very happy with that. It's a very successful game, and it wasn't just like successful in, it popped and it came out and it did well at launch, and now, remember that game? It was a success. It's continued to sell very well. Excuse me. It's continued to sell very well for them, and so they've been looking at this as the possibility of rethinking how they approach single player narrative adventure games. That leads directly to something like Dead Space. Dead Space gets the green light because of something like Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order and the way it's sold over time. And even though, they've discounted a little bit, the discounts have done very well, enabled them to continue to see really good sales from this franchise. And they're going to stick with Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order as well. But the legacy of the game might be EA shifting its focus and saying, you know what, this did so well, we can do something like Dead Space, and Dead Space could work. So, yeah. Right. I think that's all the stuff I have here on my list. I think it's time for questions. From Feature Creep, how does Bobby Kotick sleep at night? I don't know. It's a bummer to think about Bobby Kotick. I just think we look at that company and how they if you just look at how they run the game side of things, like actually getting games out the door and the decisions they make about making games, it's all like real, like so safe and so like a factory floor, just shoving stuff out. And then we get stories about the way that they treat people, and it's just, it's not worth it. All this is not the games that you're producing. Almost, no game would be worth this. It's so devoid of creativity, and people are getting treated awfully. It's just such a recipe for, I don't know. I really bums me out. From Goose Much, what are your thoughts on pennies? I hate them. I want them to go away. Pennies are disgusting, and I hate them. From All the Dinos, had you heard if any of the high-profile Activision Blizzard departures were related to the workplace culture, either for good reasons or to escape potential consequences? So yeah, this is something I meant to actually bring up. It's hard not to draw conclusions, right? Like, a bunch of important key people at Blizzard left over the last 2 years. This investigation has taken 2 years. It does feel like there is a chance that these key people knew what was coming and said, Blizzard, what are we going to do here? Are we going to just try to be like, are we going to admit to this? Are we going to cop to this and come out and try to take responsibility and make some changes? And, or what are we going to do? Are we going to try to fight it? And either way, I don't know. There would probably be situations where people be like, well, I'm not going to take responsibility for this. I don't want my name attached to any of that. I'm out of here. I imagine that did play some factor. All these people would have been interviewed during this process. Like this Department for Fair Employment and Housing in California would have wanted to talk to all these people while they were working at Blizzard. Sounds like they talked to many people who used to work there as well. Once they left, if they hadn't talked to them yet, they like tracked them down and said, we need to talk to you about this stuff. It sounds like that's what happened. So everyone knew that this investigation was ongoing. And if some of these stories, like if they knew some of these stories were coming out, it doesn't paint anyone there in a good light. So I think there might be something to that. That's me guessing though. So yeah. Speculation, please. From the Doog and Doom, no hope for xCloud on Switch, or is Papa Spencer just delaying the inevitable with his comment? So I think people, so the comment that he's referring to here is that Phil Spencer was on Kinda Funny and he was asked about that Switch on his shelf. And he's like, well, that was just a thing from Nintendo. It was just a gift from Nintendo. It doesn't mean anything. And I think that's probably true. He probably does put a lot of stuff on his shelf. The Kojima Productions thing still, I think, was maybe subconsciously suggesting it. All that stuff was, I talked about it because that thing was on his shelf, but that was not the source for that information. I have different sources for that information, obviously. But I don't think that means everything on his shelf necessarily was 100% trying to communicate something like he is a puzzle box master. That's not necessarily what was happening. But the way he spoke about it is like, I have conversations with people and they give me gifts or whatever, and I put those things on my shelf to show them off. I do think that the Switch was probably part of like the Switch gift was part of a conversation with Nintendo, and I think that part of those conversations was bringing Game Pass to Nintendo. Nintendo listened to that conversation and then said no, but they listened. They had that conversation. I mean, we know they did because that was in the Epic lawsuit between Apple. That stuff came out in an email where Phil Spencer said directly to Tim Sweeney, hey, it's something I'm still working on. So I haven't given up hope on that. Like, as in he's already had this conversation and has been told no. But the thing between Nintendo and Microsoft is not going to be something that I think a lot of consumers are going to care about, but there will be a deal between them, I think, at some point relatively soon. That's something I heard a while ago. So I guess maybe things could have fallen apart. And I'm not exactly sure what it's going to look like, but the way I've heard it explained to me is don't expect something that would be like at an E3 stage. Don't expect something that would even be in like a blog post. Maybe this is something for investors. Maybe it's something for people making games. Maybe it's for people in other regions that try to sell games, and these companies are going to work together to make that easier or something like that. And the Switch on the shelf, whether or not that is a direct reference to that or not, I don't know, but it still seems like something that could happen. From Weapon Thane, name your favorite dragon, Jeff. Okay, a couple things here. When I was in middle school, I was a pretty nerdy, but the nerdiest kid in my classes, and it was junior high actually in Michigan. He was in only a couple of my classes, but he wrote like very graphic dragon poems. And I know you thought I was going to say another word there at the end. Very graphic dragon poems about like dragons like ripping flesh apart with their teeth. And I got one once and I read it and I'm like, wow, this is intense. And I did not like feel the urge to like necessarily make fun of him, but I imagine other people wanting to do it. And that stuck with me this whole time. But also there's another Jeff Grubb who is a fantasy author, sci-fi fantasy author. I get mistaken for him all the time. He's written for a bunch of games. I think he worked on Guild Wars and stuff like that. I think he still works in games, and he's written like a lot of modules for like Dungeons and Dragons and all this stuff. But one of the first books I got from him is so I see chat's like, what is going on here? One of the first books I tried to read one of his books. I haven't ever really read anything. One of the first books I tried to read was like one that just had a dragon on it, and it just had this dragon, and it just said Jeff Grubb, and it's like this big black dragon. And so if I had to pick my favorite dragon, it's probably the one on the cover of that book that I tried to read and failed. Probably because I'm just jealous of the other Jeff Grubb. We got to wrap this up. It's time. They're going to get started with this EA Play thing here real soon. So they're going to want to talk over it, but they're going to want to talk before it as well. I'm going to let them go do that. I got to get ready to like go cover this, go write about it and stuff. So I'm going to go do that myself. Thank you everybody for watching. Thanks for your help with all the questions. Thanks for your help with the audio. Good looking out, everybody. Until next time, I'm going to get out of here. Take care of yourself. Have a good one, and goodbye.